Welcome to the Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Dennis Hall. Last week, the Commissioner's first report was published into the progress being made since the government interventions at Liverpool City Council. Those of you who heard Max Caller speak at our governance conference a few weeks ago will know that the leading questions that he addressed were, first, what are the telltale signs of corporate failure? And second, what precisely is the role of governance in maintaining corporate and service standards? Now, this new report concludes that the Council is at the beginning of a long improvement journey and has a great deal to do in the next 3 years. So let me pick up on one key comment in this report. It says there is a need to build the competence, capacity, efficiency, and effectiveness of core corporate services, including governance, finance, legal, and IT. They are the fundamental components of a well-run organization, and they need to be in place if the Council is to improve to the standard required. In other words, good governance is a vital precondition for improvement. It is part of the fundamentals that all councils must get right. Many commentators are reflecting upon what was achieved at the COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow. They generally concluded either that it was successful or that it was not successful at all. So what actually did the conference achieve? According to an interesting article from Cornerstone's Chambers, there were three main achievements. The COP26 decision represents agreement on what is known as the Paris Rulebook, which now sets a single standard for how countries report on their emission reductions under the Paris framework. In other words, future pledges and commitments will be scrutinized against this standard. COP26 has also embedded the goal that we must keep global heating below 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. The other big area of agreement was on carbon markets and carbon credits under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. The COP26 decision creates unified and internationally controlled standards to avoid a situation where the same emission reductions could be double counted by multiple companies or countries. And as for the negatives, first, finance. The final COP26 decision notes the deep regret of developed countries for missing the $100 billion target on climate finance that should have been provided to developing countries by 2020 under the Paris Agreement. Still on finance, there was no agreement on setting up a loss and damage fund to require polluting countries to make payments to climate vulnerable countries. And the headline disappointment concerned limiting the use of fossil fuels. The text of the final decision required the phasing down, not the phasing out of their use. And just a final thought. While the headlines focus upon global and national climate change strategies, many of the key actions will inevitably be taken, of course, by local authorities. The Domestic Abuse Act 2021 imposes a range of new legal duties and responsibilities upon local authorities. The Ombudsman has just issued new guidance advising them to reflect upon their own practices and procedures using the lessons contained within its report and to identify whether they can improve the way they work. A new statutory definition of abuse will be introduced under the Act. For the first time, a child or young person related to the person being abused or the abuser is regarded as a victim themselves. The new guidance draws upon the experience of a number of domestic abuse cases that have already been investigated. Ombudsman Michael King said, "Navigating the myriad processes that might be involved when victims of domestic abuse first call on their local council for help can be daunting enough, even without the trauma and stress of having gone through such awful experiences." Now, his key point is this. It's time right now for councils to scrutinize their systems and procedures to see whether they can make changes for the better. This guidance will definitely assist in carrying out any such review. Let's take a look at the planned changes to the rules concerning members holding office. The Local Government Disqualification Bill updates the disqualification criteria for local authority members to disqualify individuals from either standing for or remaining in office if they are subject to notification requirements or orders resulting from sexual offences. The current rules are set out in numerous pieces of legislation. Except for election offences, a person is disqualified from standing for election or holding public office if they've been convicted of any offence and have received a sentence of imprisonment for a period of not less than 3 months without the option of a fine. The LGA say that they fully support the objective of the new bill to ensure the highest standards of integrity and conduct in public life. They agree that it is right that individuals convicted of sexual offences should be disqualified from running for public office or retaining their seat if they've already been elected. We will report further on this in future bulletins. I want to turn now to the subject of blockchain encryption. Well, that got your attention, didn't it? The existing law of England and Wales is already able to apply to self-executing smart legal contracts without the need for statutory law reform. So says the Law Commission in its report last week. In a conclusion likely to be welcomed by the government, it suggests that an incremental development of the common law is all that is required to facilitate the use of smart legal contracts within the existing legal framework. Now, a smart legal contract is a legally binding contract involving the automatic performance of contractual obligations via a computer program. They are usually secured by blockchain encryption. This is the way commercial transactions will be done in future. In its report, the Commission encourages the market to anticipate the potential uncertainties in the legal treatment of smart legal contracts by encouraging parties to include express terms aimed at addressing them. So, the future of commercial practice is blockchain encryption. Well, that's all clear then. Now, you can get much more on this and all the articles mentioned in this week's podcast by reading Bulletin 46, available now on the LLG website. And this week, you've been listening to Dennis Hall, LLG's Bulletin Editor.